After the disappearance of the dinosaurs, Earth entered a remarkable new chapter known as the Age of Mammals. In this unfolding story of life, mammals stepped out from the shadows of survival and began to reshape the planet in extraordinary ways. Over millions of years, they diversified into an incredible range of forms, occupying forests, grasslands, deserts, oceans, and even the skies through their close evolutionary relatives. From small nocturnal creatures hidden in ancient landscapes to towering giants that once dominated vast ecosystems, their rise was steady and powerful. For tens of millions of years, the world belonged to the dinosaurs. Across immense plains, thick forests, winding river systems, coastal regions, and vast inland environments, these animals occupied nearly every major habitat on land. They existed in countless forms and sizes. Some were towering plant eaters that spent much of their lives searching for vegetation, while others were swift hunters that relied on speed, strength, and sharp senses to capture prey. Their presence shaped ecosystems across the globe, and generation after generation of dinosaurs lived, reproduced, and adapted as continents slowly shifted and climates gradually changed. Yet the age of dinosaurs was not destined to last forever. Deep within the history of Earth, a dramatic series of events unfolded that transformed the planet and altered the future of life. The disappearance of most dinosaur species marked the end of one great chapter in natural history and opened the way for another. From the aftermath of this global crisis emerged a new era in which mammals, once small and largely unnoticed, expanded into environments that had previously been dominated by giant reptiles. Over time, this transformation reshaped ecosystems, influenced evolutionary pathways, and eventually led to the appearance of many of the animal groups that exist today. During the final part of the Cretaceous period, Earth supported an extraordinary variety of living things. Dinosaurs remained the most visible large animals on land, but they shared the planet with many other forms of life. Forests were rich with flowering plants, conifers, ferns, and numerous other types of vegetation. Insects pollinated flowers and played important roles in ecological systems. Birds occupied the skies, while crocodilian relatives lived in rivers and wetlands. Mammals, though generally small, had already developed into several distinct groups and occupied a range of ecological niches. Oceans contained abundant marine life, including fish, sharks, ammonites, and large marine reptiles. The continents during this time were arranged differently from their modern positions. The ancient supercontinent that had once united much of Earth's land had long since broken apart. As a result, separate landmasses existed across different regions of the globe. These geographic changes influenced climate patterns, ocean circulation, and the distribution of plants and animals. Dinosaurs evolved in isolation on different continents, producing many unique species adapted to local conditions. The climate of the late Cretaceous was generally warm. Polar regions were milder than they are today, and sea levels remained relatively high in many areas. Large portions of continents were covered by shallow seas. Vegetation flourished across extensive regions, providing food for enormous populations of herbivorous dinosaurs. These plant eaters, in turn, supported large carnivorous species that depended upon them for survival. Among the dominant herbivores were horned dinosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, armored dinosaurs, and long-necked forms that fed on a wide variety of plants. Predatory dinosaurs included formidable hunters with powerful jaws and strong limbs. Some species traveled alone, while others may have lived in groups. Fossil evidence suggests that dinosaur behavior was often complex, involving nesting, parental care, communication, and social interactions. Although dinosaurs dominated the visible landscape, mammals had already survived for a very long time by the late Cretaceous. Their ancestors had appeared during the Age of Reptiles and gradually evolved characteristics that distinguished them from other animals. Mammals possessed hair or fur, produced milk for their young, and maintained relatively stable internal body temperatures. Most remained small because large ecological roles were occupied by dinosaurs. Many mammals lived underground, in dense vegetation or in trees. Their small size helped them avoid predators and exploit food sources that larger animals often ignored. These mammals displayed greater diversity than was once believed. Fossils reveal animals adapted for climbing, digging, swimming, and other specialized lifestyles. Some fed primarily on insects, while others consumed seeds, fruits, or small animals. Even though mammals existed in the shadow of dinosaurs, evolutionary change continued within their populations. Important anatomical features developed that would later support their expansion after the extinction event. As the late Cretaceous progressed, Earth experienced significant geological activity. Volcanic eruptions occurred in several regions, releasing gases and materials into the atmosphere. One of the most important volcanic episodes took place in what is now India, where enormous lava flows known as the Deccan Traps were formed. These eruptions lasted for extended periods and released vast quantities of volcanic gases. Scientists continue to study the effects of this volcanic activity on climate and ecosystems. While volcanic activity may have placed stress on some environments, another event was approaching that would have far greater consequences. Approximately 66 million years ago, a large asteroid traveling through space crossed Earth's path. This object was several kilometers wide and carried an immense amount of energy. When it struck Earth, the impact occurred in the region that is now associated with the Chicxulub crater on the Yucatan Peninsula. The collision released an amount of energy far beyond anything produced by human technology. Within moments, rock at the impact site was melted and vaporized. Massive shock waves traveled through the ground and atmosphere. Material was blasted high above Earth, and debris spread across enormous distances. The immediate effects near the impact site were catastrophic. Any organisms located close to the collision zone would have had little chance of survival. The consequences extended far beyond the region of impact. Dust, ash, soot, and vaporized material entered the atmosphere in tremendous quantities. As these materials spread around the planet, sunlight reaching Earth's surface was greatly reduced. Darkness and dim conditions affected ecosystems across continents and oceans. Photosynthesis became much less effective because plants depended on sunlight to produce food. As plant productivity declined, food chains began to collapse. Herbivorous animals struggled to find sufficient vegetation. Carnivorous species then faced shortages as populations of prey animals declined. The disruption spread through ecological systems with remarkable speed. Organisms that depended directly or indirectly on abundant plant growth encountered increasingly difficult conditions. Temperatures also changed significantly. Reduced sunlight caused cooling in many regions. Seasonal patterns may have been altered. Weather systems likely became unstable. Combined with existing environmental pressures, these changes created conditions that many species could not endure. The extinction event that followed eliminated a large proportion of Earth's species. Non-avian dinosaurs were among the most famous victims. Species that had dominated land ecosystems for tens of millions of years disappeared from the fossil record. Large marine reptiles vanished. Ammonites, which had existed for hundreds of millions of years, also became extinct. Numerous plant species, microscopic organisms, and many other life forms suffered severe losses. Not every dinosaur disappeared. A group of feathered dinosaurs had already evolved characteristics associated with flight. These animals survived the extinction event and continued evolving. Modern birds are descendants of these surviving dinosaurs. Every bird alive today represents a living branch of the dinosaur lineage. The survival of birds demonstrates that extinction was not simply determined by ancestry. Different factors influenced survival, including body size, diet, reproductive strategies, habitat preferences, and the ability to endure environmental disruption. Some groups possessed characteristics that increased their chances of surviving the difficult conditions following the impact. Mammals were among the groups that managed to survive. Their relatively small size may have reduced their food requirements. Many species could shelter underground or in protected environments. Diverse diets allowed some mammals to consume insects, seeds, roots, carrion, and other resources that remained available during the crisis. These advantages did not guarantee survival, but they improved the chances that certain populations would persist. The period immediately after the extinction event was challenging for all surviving organisms. Ecosystems had been severely disrupted. Food resources were limited. Many habitats were damaged or altered. Species that survived faced an uncertain world in which familiar ecological relationships had disappeared. Over time, however, conditions gradually stabilized. Dust and debris settled out of the atmosphere. Sunlight returned in greater amounts. Plant communities began recovering. New ecological opportunities emerged across landscapes that no longer contained large populations of non-avian dinosaurs. This recovery created one of the most significant evolutionary opportunities in Earth's history. For millions of years, large ecological roles had been occupied primarily by dinosaurs. After their disappearance, many of these roles became available. Mammals were among the groups positioned to take advantage of these newly opened opportunities. As mammal populations expanded, evolutionary diversification accelerated. Different lineages adapted to different environments and food sources. Some species became larger, others developed specialized teeth, limbs, and sensory systems. Natural selection favored characteristics suited to particular ecological roles. Within a relatively short geological period, mammals began occupying habitats that had previously been inaccessible or heavily dominated by dinosaurs. Forests, grasslands, wetlands, coastal regions, and underground environments supported increasing numbers of mammalian species. Evolution produced animals adapted for running, climbing, digging, swimming, and eventually flying. The early stages of mammalian expansion involved many experimental forms. Some lineages disappeared after limited success, while others gave rise to major groups that continue to exist today. Fossils reveal an impressive variety of body plans emerging during the millions of years following the extinction event. The diversity of mammalian life increased dramatically as evolution explored new possibilities. Predatory mammals evolved stronger jaws, sharper teeth, and improved hunting abilities. Herbivorous mammals developed specialized digestive systems capable of processing different types of vegetation. Omnivorous species exploited a wide range of food sources. Each adaptation allowed mammals to occupy particular ecological niches and reduce competition with other species. Brain development also played an important role. Many mammals possessed relatively large brains compared with their body size. Enhanced sensory abilities, learning capacity, memory, and behavioral flexibility helped mammals respond to changing environments. These characteristics became increasingly important as ecosystems continued evolving during the early part of the mammalian age. The opening of the mammal age was therefore not a sudden replacement of one group by another. It was a long evolutionary process unfolding across millions of years. During the final part of the Cretaceous period, the world was still dominated by dinosaurs. Vast forests stretched across many regions, flowering plants had become widespread, insects were abundant, and ecosystems were filled with a great variety of reptiles, birds, and other animals. Yet hidden among this rich and complex life was a group of creatures whose importance would only become fully apparent much later. These were the early mammals. The mammals of the late Cretaceous were generally small animals. Most were far smaller than the giant dinosaurs that shared their world. Many could fit comfortably in a person's hand. Their small size helped them survive in environments where larger animals controlled much of the landscape. They lived in forests, near rivers, in undergrowth among fallen logs, and in underground burrows. Some climbed trees, some searched for food on the forest floor, and others may have spent much of their lives hidden from predators. The story of these mammals stretches back much earlier than the late Cretaceous. Their ancestors had appeared during the age of the synapsids, a group of animals that existed long before the first dinosaurs emerged. Over many millions of years, these ancestors gradually evolved characteristics that would eventually define mammals. Changes occurred in the skull, teeth, jaw structure, hearing system, metabolism, and body covering. These developments happened slowly across immense spans of geological time. By the late Cretaceous, mammals already possessed many features recognizable in modern species. They had hair or fur which helped regulate body temperature. They produced milk to feed their young. Their bodies were capable of maintaining a relatively stable internal temperature. Their brains were generally larger in proportion to body size than those of many reptiles. They also had specialized teeth designed for different functions such as cutting, piercing, grinding, and crushing food. One of the most important features of mammals was their teeth. Unlike many reptiles, which often possessed rows of similar teeth, mammals developed different kinds of teeth, adapted for specific purposes. Incisors were useful for cutting food. Canines could pierce or hold prey. Molars were suited for crushing and grinding. This specialization allowed mammals to exploit a wide variety of food sources. Fossil evidence from the late Cretaceous reveals a remarkable diversity among mammals. Although they remained relatively small, they were not all alike. Scientists have discovered numerous species showing different lifestyles, diets, and anatomical adaptations. These findings have transformed earlier views that late Cretaceous mammals were simple, uniform creatures. Instead, they were already evolving into many distinct forms. Among the important mammalian groups of the late Cretaceous were the multituberculates. These mammals were among the most successful mammalian lineages of their time. They survived for an extraordinarily long period and occupied many ecological roles. Their name comes from the numerous small cusps found on their teeth. These specialized teeth allowed them to process a variety of foods. Multituberculates often resembled small rodents in general appearance, although they were not closely related to modern rodents. They possessed strong jaws and teeth capable of handling seeds, fruits, plant material, and possibly insects. Fossils indicate that they lived across large parts of the northern hemisphere. Their abundance suggests that they were highly successful in late Cretaceous ecosystems. Many multituberculates had bodies adapted for active movement. Some species appear to have been skilled climbers. Their limb structures suggest they could move through vegetation and perhaps spend considerable time in trees. Others may have been more ground-dwelling. Their adaptability contributed to their long-lasting success. Another important group of mammals during the late Cretaceous consisted of early therians. This branch would eventually give rise to marsupials and placental mammals. Although these ancient forms differed from their modern descendants, they already displayed several characteristics that connected them to later mammalian evolution. The early therians were generally insect eaters. Insects represented an abundant and dependable food source. The spread of flowering plants during the Cretaceous helped support diverse insect populations, creating opportunities for mammals that specialized in feeding on them. Sharp teeth and agile bodies made many therian mammals effective hunters of small prey. Some therians may also have eaten fruits, seeds, worms, and other small animals. Their flexible diets increased their chances of survival. Rather than depending on a single food source, they could exploit whatever resources were available within their environment. The reproductive biology of these mammals remains an important area of study. Evidence suggests that some early therians already possessed reproductive strategies resembling those seen in marsupials and placental mammals today. These developments would later become crucial in the expansion of mammals after the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs. Marsupial relatives were already present during the late Cretaceous. Fossils discovered in North America and other regions reveal species that belong to lineages close to the ancestors of modern marsupials. These animals likely gave birth to highly underdeveloped young that continued their growth after birth. Placental relatives were also beginning to diversify. Although true modern placental groups had not yet reached their later variety, the foundations were already being established. Small mammals carrying traits associated with placental ancestry were present and gradually evolving. The late Cretaceous also included mammals belonging to the group known as eutherians. These animals are particularly significant because they are closely connected to the ancestry of placental mammals. Fossil discoveries have shown that eutherians were already becoming diverse before the end of the Cretaceous. Eutherians possessed skeletal features that distinguished them from other mammalian groups. Their limb structures suggest improved mobility and flexibility. These adaptations may have enabled them to exploit a range of habitats and food sources. Their evolutionary success would become increasingly important in later periods. Another mammalian lineage present during the late Cretaceous included metatherians, the broader group associated with marsupial ancestry. Metatherians occupied various ecological niches and demonstrated that mammalian diversity was expanding long before the disappearance of most dinosaurs. The existence of both eutherians and metatherians during the late Cretaceous shows that major mammalian branches had already emerged. The later dominance of placental mammals and the continued survival of marsupials were rooted in evolutionary developments that occurred during this time. Monotreme ancestors may also have existed during the late Cretaceous. Modern monotremes include species such as the platypus and the short-beaked echidna. Their ancient relatives represented another branch of mammalian evolution. Fossil evidence for these early forms remains limited, but researchers believe that monotreme lineages were already established. The environments inhabited by late Cretaceous mammals varied greatly. Forests were especially important habitats. Dense vegetation provided shelter from predators and access to food. Fallen logs, leaf litter, and tangled roots created countless hiding places where small mammals could live relatively safely. Many mammals probably adopted nocturnal lifestyles. Being active at night offered several advantages. Darkness reduced the risk of encountering large daytime predators. Cooler temperatures could also make movement more efficient. Strong senses of smell, hearing, and touch helped these animals navigate in low-light conditions. The development of advanced hearing was particularly important. Mammalian ancestors had undergone major changes in the jaw and ear regions. Bones that once formed part of the jaw became incorporated into the middle ear. This transformation improved hearing sensitivity and allowed mammals to detect subtle sounds. Excellent hearing would have been valuable for locating prey, avoiding predators, communicating with offspring, and navigating through dense vegetation. Combined with a keen sense of smell, it gave mammals an effective way of gathering information about their surroundings. Brain development was another significant aspect of mammalian evolution during the late Cretaceous. Fossil skulls indicate increasing brain complexity in some groups. Enlarged regions associated with sensory processing may have improved environmental awareness and behavioral flexibility. Behavior likely played an important role in mammalian success. Mammals were capable of learning and adapting to changing circumstances. Flexible behavior allowed them to respond to different food sources, environmental conditions, and predator threats. Such adaptability became increasingly important as ecosystems changed. Evidence suggests that burrowing behavior was common among some species. Underground tunnels offered protection from predators, weather extremes, and environmental disturbances. Burrows could serve as nesting sites, food storage areas, and places to raise young. Tree climbing adaptations also appeared in certain mammals. Curved claws, flexible limbs, and grasping abilities suggest that some species spent significant time above the ground. Trees provided access to fruits, seeds, insects, and nesting sites, while reducing encounters with ground-based predators. The rise of flowering plants during the Cretaceous had important effects on mammalian evolution. Flowering plants spread across many ecosystems and produced new food resources. Fruits, seeds, nectar-associated insects, and other products of flowering plant communities expanded ecological opportunities for mammals. As plant diversity increased, insect diversity also expanded. Many mammals benefited from this growing abundance of insects. Insect-eating species found rich feeding grounds within flowering plant ecosystems. This relationship helped support mammalian diversification. The fossil record of late Cretaceous mammals is often incomplete because of their small size. Tiny bones are less likely to fossilize and more difficult to discover. Despite these challenges, important fossil sites have provided valuable information about mammalian diversity. Many fossils consist of isolated teeth and jaw fragments. Teeth are among the hardest structures in the body and preserve well over geological time. Because mammalian teeth are highly specialized, they provide scientists with important clues about diet, evolutionary relationships, and ecological roles. Some fossil discoveries include nearly complete skeletons. These rare finds have greatly improved understanding of mammalian anatomy and behavior. Detailed skeletal remains reveal information about movement, posture, muscle attachment, and habitat preferences. Important late Cretaceous mammal fossils have been found across several continents. North America has yielded many significant discoveries, particularly from formations dating to the closing stages of the Cretaceous. Asia has also produced exceptionally important specimens that have expanded scientific knowledge of early mammalian evolution. Fossil sites in what is now Mongolia have proven especially valuable. These deposits preserve animals that lived in ancient environments, characterized by dunes, river systems, and seasonal conditions. Numerous mammalian species have been identified from these regions, providing insight into late Cretaceous ecosystems. Discoveries from China have also contributed substantially to understanding mammalian evolution. Remarkably preserved fossils have revealed details of fur, skeletal structure, and developmental patterns. These specimens have demonstrated that mammalian diversity was greater than previously recognized. The interactions between mammals and dinosaurs remain an area of active research. Mammals undoubtedly lived alongside dinosaurs throughout the late Cretaceous. Small mammals likely served as prey for many predatory dinosaurs, reptiles, birds, and other carnivorous animals. Some mammals may have scavenged from dinosaur carcasses when opportunities arose. Dead animals represented valuable sources of nutrients. Small mammals capable of locating carcasses could benefit from resources left behind by larger predators. Certain mammals may even have preyed upon dinosaur eggs or hatchlings under favorable circumstances. Fossil evidence from some earlier periods suggests that small mammals occasionally fed on young dinosaurs. Such interactions illustrate the complexity of ancient ecosystems. The climate of the late Cretaceous generally remained warmer than modern conditions across much of the world. Polar regions lacked the extensive, permanent ice sheets that characterized later geological periods. Warm temperatures supported widespread forests and diverse habitats. Mammals adapted to these conditions through various physiological and behavioral strategies. Fur helped regulate body temperature. Burrowing provided protection from temperature fluctuations. Nocturnal activity patterns reduced exposure to daytime heat. Continental arrangements during the late Cretaceous also influenced mammalian evolution. Land masses were gradually moving toward positions closer to their modern locations. Changing geography affected migration routes, habitat availability, and species distribution. Isolation of populations on different landmasses encouraged evolutionary divergence. Over time, separate populations developed distinct characteristics. This process contributed to increasing mammalian diversity across the globe. Predator avoidance remained a constant challenge. Mammals developed numerous survival strategies including concealment, rapid movement, climbing, burrowing, and nocturnal behavior. Small body size itself could be advantageous in densely vegetated environments where hiding places were abundant. Reproductive care represented another important feature of mammals. Feeding young with milk allowed offspring to receive nutrition directly from their mothers. This system improved survival chances during early development. Parental care likely varied among species, but generally provided advantages compared with less intensive reproductive strategies. Growth rates among mammals may have differed from those of many reptiles. Evidence suggests that mammals maintained relatively active metabolisms. Higher metabolic activity required greater food intake but supported sustained activity levels and internal temperature regulation. The evolution of fur was closely connected to these physiological changes. Fur reduced heat loss and enhanced temperature control. It also may have played roles in sensory perception and communication. Whiskers, in particular, provided information about nearby objects and environmental conditions. The late Cretaceous witnessed ongoing evolutionary experimentation among mammals. Numerous lineages explored different ecological opportunities. Some specialized in insect hunting, others focused on seeds, fruits, or mixed diets. Some became skilled climbers, while others adapted to life underground or on the forest floor. These evolutionary developments occurred while dinosaurs still dominated terrestrial ecosystems. Mammals were not waiting passively for future opportunities. They were already diversifying, adapting, and establishing many traits that would characterize later mammalian evolution. By the closing stages of the late Cretaceous, mammals represented a diverse and dynamic component of global ecosystems. Their populations occupied many habitats across multiple continents. Their evolutionary branches included multituberculates, metatherians, eutherians and other groups that contributed to the broader mammalian story. The extinction event that occurred near the end of the Cretaceous would dramatically alter Earth's ecosystems. However, before that event took place, mammals had already achieved significant evolutionary success. They possessed advanced sensory systems, specialized teeth, varied diets, complex behaviors, parental care, fur-covered bodies, and multiple reproductive strategies. Their diversity during the late Cretaceous laid important foundations for the extensive mammalian expansion that would unfold in the geological ages that followed. At the end of the Cretaceous period, life on Earth experienced one of the most devastating biological crises in its entire history. A vast number of species disappeared within a relatively short span of geological time. Many groups of animals and plants that had flourished for millions of years suddenly faced environmental conditions that they could not survive. Among the most famous victims were the non-avian dinosaurs, which had dominated terrestrial ecosystems for tens of millions of years. Large marine reptiles vanished from the oceans. Numerous species of flying reptiles disappeared from the skies, and many forms of plant and animal life were lost forever. Yet, amid this worldwide destruction, mammals managed to survive. Their survival during this difficult period would eventually allow them to spread into newly available environments and become one of the most successful groups of animals on the planet. Before the mass extinction occurred, mammals were already present across many parts of the world. They had existed for a very long time, tracing their ancestry back to earlier mammal-like creatures that lived during the Age of Reptiles. Throughout much of the Mesozoic era, mammals remained relatively small. Most species were no larger than modern mice, rats, shrews, or small squirrels. Although they lived in the shadow of dinosaurs, they were not rare. Fossil discoveries from many regions show that mammals had already diversified into numerous forms long before the extinction event. Some climbed trees, some burrowed underground, some hunted insects, some fed on seeds and fruits, and others occupied specialized ecological roles. The physical characteristics of mammals played an important role in their ability to survive changing environmental conditions. One of the most significant features was warm-bloodedness. Mammals could maintain relatively stable internal body temperatures even when external temperatures changed. This ability allowed them to remain active under conditions that might challenge many other animals. During a period of environmental instability, such flexibility could become extremely valuable. Another important feature was the presence of hair or fur. Fur provided insulation and helped mammals conserve body heat. If global temperatures dropped following the catastrophic events that marked the end of the Cretaceous, animals with insulating body coverings may have been better equipped to cope with cooler conditions. Fur also offered protection from weather and helped maintain stable body temperatures during periods of environmental stress. Mammals also possessed highly developed senses. Many species had excellent hearing, keen senses of smell, and sensitive whiskers that helped them navigate their surroundings. Strong sensory abilities allowed mammals to find food, avoid dangers, locate shelter, and detect changes in their environment. During a time when ecosystems were being disrupted and familiar habitats were disappearing, these abilities could have increased their chances of survival. One of the most important factors in mammalian survival was their generally small body size. Small animals require less food than large animals. When food supplies become scarce, smaller creatures often have an advantage because their energy needs are lower. Following the extinction event, many ecosystems experienced severe disruptions. Plants died in large numbers, food chains collapsed, and resources became difficult to find. large animals that needed enormous quantities of food every day faced especially difficult challenges. Small mammals could survive on much smaller amounts of food and could exploit resources that larger animals might ignore. Small body size also made it easier for mammals to find shelter. Many species could hide in burrows, hollow logs, rock crevices, dense vegetation, and other protected locations. Such shelters could provide protection from harsh environmental conditions. Underground burrows in particular may have offered refuge from extreme temperatures, wildfires, airborne debris, and other hazards associated with the environmental upheaval. The ability to burrow was especially important for some mammalian species. Burrows create relatively stable environments where temperatures fluctuate less dramatically than at the surface. Underground shelters can also protect animals from predators and natural disasters. During a period marked by widespread ecological disruption, burrowing mammals may have found safety beneath the ground, while conditions above remained dangerous and unstable. Dietary flexibility was another major advantage. Many mammals were omnivores, meaning they could consume a wide variety of foods. Instead of relying on a single food source, they could eat insects, seeds, fruits, roots, fungi, carrion, eggs, and other available materials. When one type of food became scarce, they could shift to another. This flexibility increased their chances of surviving sudden environmental changes. Insect-eating mammals may have been particularly successful during the extinction period. Insects often survive environmental disturbances more effectively than larger animals. They reproduce quickly, occupy diverse habitats, and can feed on many different materials. Mammals that depended on insects therefore may have retained access to food even as larger ecosystems collapsed around them. Seeds may also have played a crucial role. Seeds can remain viable for extended periods and often survive environmental disasters better than living leaves and soft plant tissues. Mammals capable of feeding on seeds could exploit a food source that remained available even when fresh vegetation became scarce. Strong jaws and specialized teeth allowed many mammals to crack open seeds and obtain valuable nutrients. The reproductive biology of mammals also contributed to their resilience. Mammalian young developed under parental care, receiving nourishment and protection during the earliest stages of life. Mothers provided milk, ensuring that offspring had access to a reliable food source even when external conditions were difficult. This investment in offspring may have increased survival rates during periods of environmental stress. Parental care provided additional benefits beyond feeding. Adult mammals often protected their young from predators and environmental hazards. They could move offspring to safer locations, keep them warm, and help them survive challenging conditions. Such behaviors increased the likelihood that at least some members of each generation would reach maturity. Brain development represented another important factor. Mammals generally possessed relatively large and complex brains for their body size. Greater behavioral flexibility allowed them to adapt to changing circumstances. Animals capable of modifying their behavior in response to new challenges often have better chances of survival when environments change rapidly. Behavioral adaptability could include finding new food sources, exploring unfamiliar habitats, changing activity patterns, and developing new survival strategies. Mammals were not locked into a single way of life. Many species could respond creatively to environmental pressures, increasing their resilience during times of crisis. The extinction event itself was likely triggered by the impact of a massive asteroid approximately 66 million years ago. When the asteroid struck Earth, enormous quantities of dust, soot, vaporized rock, and debris were thrown into the atmosphere. This material spread around the globe and blocked significant amounts of sunlight. Reduced sunlight interfered with photosynthesis, the process through which plants produce food. As plant productivity declined, food chains throughout the world began to collapse. Many herbivorous animals depended directly on living vegetation. As plants became less abundant, herbivore populations suffered. Carnivores that depended on herbivores then faced food shortages of their own. Entire ecosystems experienced cascading failures as one group after another lost access to essential resources. Mammals were affected by these changes as well, but several characteristics helped them endure. Their small size reduced food requirements. Their flexible diets allowed them to exploit alternative food sources. Their sheltering behaviors protected them from environmental extremes. Their reproductive strategies helped maintain populations. Their intelligence and adaptability allowed them to respond to changing circumstances. Environmental darkness may have persisted for months or even years in some regions. During this period, ecosystems were under tremendous pressure. Animals dependent on abundant vegetation faced severe challenges. Mammals capable of feeding on stored food resources, underground plant parts, insects, and decaying organic matter may have been better positioned to survive. Wildfires likely occurred across extensive areas after the impact. Heat generated by falling debris may have ignited vegetation over vast regions. Forests, woodlands, and other habitats experienced destruction. Animals living in exposed environments faced significant risks. Burrowing mammals and those capable of sheltering in protected locations may have escaped some of the worst effects. Following the initial catastrophe, long-term environmental changes continued to shape survival outcomes. Temperatures fluctuated, rainfall patterns changed, and ecosystems underwent extensive reorganization. The world that emerged after the extinction event was very different from the one that had existed before. Species capable of adapting to these new conditions survived, while others disappeared. Freshwater environments may have served as important refuges. Rivers, lakes, ponds, and wetlands often maintain food resources even when terrestrial ecosystems are severely disrupted. Some mammals lived near freshwater habitats where insects, aquatic organisms, and plant materials remained available. Access to such resources could have improved survival prospects. Geographic distribution also influenced survival. Mammals occupied many different regions across the globe. Because they were spread across diverse habitats, not all populations experienced identical conditions. Some areas may have suffered more severely than others. Wide distribution reduced the likelihood that a single disaster would eliminate every population of a species. Ecological diversity among mammals further increased survival chances. Mammals did not all live the same way or eat the same foods. Different species occupied different ecological niches. Some climbed trees, some lived underground, some inhabited forests, some occupied open landscapes, and others remained near water. This diversity meant that environmental changes affected species differently. Even if some groups disappeared, others could survive. Fossil evidence from rocks deposited shortly after the extinction event indicates that mammals persisted, while many other groups declined dramatically. Teeth, jaws, skeletal remains, and fossilized footprints reveal that mammals continued to occupy numerous habitats during the difficult years that followed the catastrophe. These fossils provide important clues about how mammalian communities endured and eventually expanded. The extinction of many dominant reptiles also reduced competition for resources. Before the extinction, mammals shared ecosystems with a wide range of dinosaur species. After the disappearance of non-avian dinosaurs, many ecological opportunities became available. Mammals that survived the initial disaster could begin occupying habitats and feeding roles that had previously been unavailable to them. This expansion did not happen immediately. The earliest years after the extinction remained challenging. Ecosystems required time to recover. Plant communities gradually re-established themselves. Food webs slowly became more complex. As conditions improved, surviving mammals diversified into new forms and spread into new environments. During the Paleogene period, which followed the end of the Cretaceous, mammalian evolution accelerated. Descendants of the small survivors gradually developed a remarkable variety of body forms, diets, and lifestyles. Some became specialized herbivores, others evolved into predators. Some adapted to life in trees, while others became runners on open ground. Certain lineages eventually entered aquatic environments and gave rise to marine mammals. The success of mammals after the extinction event was not the result of a single trait. Rather, it emerged from a combination of characteristics that worked together during a time of extraordinary environmental stress. Small body size, flexible diets, burrowing behavior, parental care, warm-blooded physiology, developed senses, behavioral adaptability, ecological diversity, and broad geographic distribution all contributed to survival. Each surviving mammal represented a continuation of a lineage that had endured immense challenges. Every population that persisted carried genetic information accumulated over millions of years of evolution. Through survival and reproduction, these lineages passed their traits to future generations, allowing mammals to remain a significant component of Earth's ecosystems. Research continues to provide new insights into this important period of history. Fossil discoveries reveal additional details about mammalian diversity before and after the extinction. Studies of ancient climates help scientists understand the environmental conditions that survivors faced. Investigations of fossil teeth, bones, and microscopic remains contribute to a clearer picture of how mammals lived during one of the most turbulent intervals in the history of life. As new evidence emerges, scientists refine their understanding of the factors that shaped survival. Different mammalian groups may have benefited from different advantages depending on their habitats and lifestyles. Some may have survived primarily because of their diets, while others relied more heavily on sheltering behavior or reproductive strategies. The overall pattern suggests that flexibility and adaptability played central roles in helping mammals endure a world undergoing profound and rapid change. Long before mammals became the dominant large land animals of later ages, their ancestors endured conditions that eliminated many other successful groups. Their persistence through the mass extinction event ensured that mammalian evolution would continue, shaping the future development of terrestrial ecosystems and eventually giving rise to the enormous diversity of mammal species that would inhabit the planet in the millions of years that followed. The time after the major extinction event at the end of the Cretaceous period marks a long and slow phase in Earth's history, when living things began to expand again across land and water. This period is known as the Paleocene epoch, which began about 66 million years ago and lasted for several million years. The world at this time was changing in many ways, and the living conditions on land and in oceans were shifting as ecosystems rebuilt themselves. Many groups of animals and plants that had been reduced in number began to spread into empty spaces left behind after the extinction event. The land surfaces, forests, rivers, and seas all carried signs of disruption, from the earlier global environmental changes, and recovery was gradual across many regions. In the early part of this epoch, large areas of land were covered by vegetation that had begun to regrow after widespread loss. Plant life started to expand in different directions, and many types of flowering plants continued to develop and spread. These plants played an important role in shaping the environments of the time. Forests appeared in many regions, and they contained a mix of plant types that could grow in changing soil conditions. Ferns also became widespread in the early stages, especially in areas where soil had been disturbed. These plants often grew quickly and covered open ground that had previously been affected by fire, ash deposits, and climate instability. The atmosphere during this period was influenced by the long-term effects of the extinction event. Dust and particles that had once filled the air were no longer present in the same amounts, and sunlight reached the surface more steadily. Temperatures across many regions were generally warm, although not stable in every place or at every time. Weather systems shifted across continents and oceans, and rainfall patterns changed as vegetation expanded and interacted with the atmosphere. These conditions supported plant growth in many regions, allowing ecosystems to slowly rebuild their structure. On land, mammals began to occupy a wider range of ecological roles. After the extinction of many large reptile groups that had dominated earlier environments, mammals started to expand in number and diversity. Early mammals of the Paleocene were generally small to medium in size, and they lived in forests, near water sources, and in open areas with vegetation. Their diets varied, with some feeding on plants, others feeding on insects, and some consuming small animals. The available ecological space allowed mammals to spread into different environments without strong competition from previously dominant groups. Birds also continued to develop during this period. Many bird groups that survived the extinction event began to diversify in form and behavior. Some birds adapted to forest environments, while others moved across open landscapes and near water bodies. Their ability to fly allowed them to move across regions and occupy areas that were still recovering. The structure of bird populations shifted as new forms appeared and older surviving forms adjusted to changing environments. Reptiles that survived the extinction event also remained present in the Paleocene world. Crocodile relatives continued to live in rivers and swamp areas, where they moved through slow-flowing water systems and fed on available animal life. Turtles also remained stable in many freshwater environments. These groups were able to persist due to their adaptability to aquatic and semi-aquatic conditions. Their presence contributed to the structure of food systems in rivers and lakes. Marine environments also experienced long-term changes after the extinction event. Ocean ecosystems were affected by earlier disruptions, and many marine organisms had disappeared at the end of the Cretaceous. In the Paleocene oceans, plankton populations began to recover, and these microscopic organisms formed the base of marine food chains. Fish populations gradually expanded as food sources became more available. Marine mammals had not yet fully developed into large forms, but early stages of their evolution began during this general time period. Coastal regions and shallow seas became areas where many organisms concentrated as conditions improved. The continents during this period were positioned in different arrangements compared to modern geography. Land masses continued to shift slowly due to tectonic movement. These movements affected ocean circulation patterns and climate distribution. As continents changed position over time, land connections and separations influenced the movement of animals and plants. Rivers changed their paths, and new sediment layers formed in basins and coastal regions. These geological processes affected the development of habitats across large regions of the Earth. Soil development during the Paleocene was influenced by plant growth and weather conditions. As vegetation expanded, organic material accumulated in soil layers. This supported the growth of new plant communities. Soil types varied across regions depending on climate, water availability, and local geological conditions. In areas with high rainfall, soils developed different structures compared to dry regions. These differences influenced the types of plants that could grow in each location. The recovery of ecosystems during this time involved gradual changes in food systems. Insects became an important part of many land environments. Their populations increased as plants became more abundant. Insect life supported the diets of small mammals and birds. Pollination activities also became more active as flowering plants expanded. These interactions between insects and plants contributed to the spread of vegetation across different land areas. Forested environments during the Paleocene contained a variety of plant structures. Trees grew in many regions, forming layered environments with different levels of plant height. Understory plants developed beneath taller vegetation, and ground-level plants covered the soil in many areas. These layers provided shelter and food sources for small animals. Leaf litter accumulated on the forest floor, supporting decomposers and microorganisms that processed organic material and returned nutrients to the soil. River systems played an important role in shaping landscapes during this time. Water flow patterns carried sediment from inland regions toward coastal areas. Floodplains formed along riverbanks, where nutrients were deposited during periods of high water flow. These floodplains supported plant growth and provided feeding areas for many animals. Wetland environments also expanded in regions where water collected in low-lying areas. These wetlands contained a mix of aquatic plants and animal life that depended on water-rich conditions. The early Paleocene climate showed patterns of warmth across many regions of the Earth. Polar regions did not have permanent ice cover, and plant life extended into high-latitude areas. Forests grew in regions that are now colder in modern times. These forests contained plant types that adapted to extended periods of light or darkness depending on seasonal changes. Temperature differences between equatorial and polar regions were present, but the overall climate supported vegetation in a wide range of locations. Animal life on land continued to diversify through gradual changes in body structure and behavior. Mammals developed different types of teeth suited for various diets. Some mammals had sharp teeth for feeding on insects or small animals, while others had flatter teeth for processing plant material. Limb structures also adapted for movement in different environments, including ground surfaces, trees, and burrows. These changes allowed mammals to occupy many ecological roles. Small reptiles and amphibians remained present in many environments. Amphibians continued to live in areas with access to water, where they completed parts of their life cycles. Their populations depended on moisture levels and the availability of suitable breeding sites. Reptiles that lived on land or near water sources remained active in regions where climate conditions supported their survival. The spread of flowering plants during this epoch influenced many aspects of the environment. These plants produced seeds and flowers that supported interactions with insects and other animals. Fruit-producing plants also appeared in different regions, providing food sources for various species. Seed dispersal occurred through multiple natural processes involving animals, wind, and water movement. These processes allowed plants to expand into new areas over time. The structure of ecosystems during the Paleocene involved many interconnected living systems. Plants formed the base of land environments, supporting herbivorous animals. These herbivores provided food sources for carnivorous animals. Decomposition processes recycled organic material back into soil and water systems. These interactions supported the continued development of stable environments across regions undergoing recovery. In freshwater environments, fish populations continued to develop new forms and behaviors. Rivers, lakes, and wetlands contain different species adapted to specific water conditions. Some fish lived in slow-moving water, while others occupied faster streams. Aquatic insects and small invertebrates also formed part of these freshwater systems. These organisms contributed to nutrient cycles within water bodies. The movement of continents during the Paleocene influenced ocean currents. These currents affected temperature distribution in marine environments. Marine ecosystems responded to changes in nutrient flow and water temperature. Plankton growth supported larger marine organisms, and food chains developed gradually across ocean regions. Coastal ecosystems contained a mix of marine and land influences, where tidal movement shaped habitats. The development of early mammal groups included many different lineages. Some groups were ancestors of later herbivorous mammals, while others were early forms of carnivorous lineages. Their reproductive systems allowed them to produce offspring in protected environments, often in burrows or sheltered areas. Parental care varied among different species, and survival of young depended on environmental conditions and availability of food sources. Bird populations continued to adapt to different ecological niches. Some birds developed feeding behaviors that involved hunting insects or small animals, while others focused on plant material or aquatic food sources. Their feathers provided insulation and supported flight, which allowed movement across varied landscapes. Nesting behaviors developed in different environments, including trees, ground areas, and near water bodies. The interaction between climate and vegetation during the Paleocene shaped many regions of the Earth. Rainfall patterns supported dense vegetation in some areas, while other regions experienced more open plant coverage. Seasonal changes influenced plant growth cycles and animal behavior. Migration patterns among some animal groups developed in response to changes in food availability and environmental conditions. Sedimentary deposits formed in many basins during this time. Rivers carried eroded material from land surfaces into low-lying regions, where layers of sediment accumulated over long periods. These deposits preserved evidence of plant and animal activity. Over time, these layers built up across wide areas, recording environmental changes that occurred during the Paleocene. The expansion of life after the extinction event involved continuous adjustment to available resources. Organisms responded to changes in temperature, water availability, and vegetation structure. Ecological systems formed gradually across different regions, and living organisms occupied available spaces in land, freshwater, and marine environments. New relationships between organisms developed as populations expanded and interacted across various habitats. The Paleocene epoch began after a major change in Earth's life history, starting about 66 million years ago and lasting until about 56 million years ago. During this long span of time, mammals experienced a wide spread across many environments and developed many different forms, body sizes, and ways of living. This development happened in many stages as the world recovered from major ecological loss. The land surfaces, plant life, and climate conditions shifted over time, creating many available living spaces. Mammals, which had already existed during earlier geological periods in smaller and more limited forms began to occupy many ecological roles that were previously occupied by other large animals. Their numbers and variety changed continuously as time moved forward through the epoch. At the beginning of the Paleocene epoch, the Earth's surface had many regions with open ecological space. Forest areas spread across large parts of the continents, and plant growth became widespread again after earlier environmental disruptions. These forests supported many small and medium-sized mammals that fed on plants, seeds, insects, and small animals. Mammals at this time included early forms of placental mammals, marsupial-related groups, and monotreme-related lineages. Each of these groups had different biological traits that allowed them to survive in different conditions. Their bodies were generally small in size during the earliest part of the epoch, with simple limb structures and teeth that were adapted for flexible feeding habits. As time moved forward, mammal populations began to occupy more ecological zones. Some groups lived in dense forest environments where the ground was covered with plants, fallen leaves, and decomposing organic material. Others lived in more open woodland areas where movement across ground surfaces was easier. Some mammals developed habits of climbing trees, feeding on insects in bark or leaves, and moving through branches. These habits were supported by changes in limb structure, joint flexibility, and claw development. Teeth structure also changed in many groups, allowing different forms of feeding activity such as crushing, slicing, or grinding food materials. The Paleocene epoch also included the spread of mammals into regions with varying climates. Temperature conditions across the Earth were generally warm, and seasonal variation was present in some regions. Rainfall patterns supported large plant growth, and many areas had dense vegetation cover. Mammals responded to these environmental conditions through changes in behavior and body structure. Some mammals remained active during the night hours, which helped them avoid larger reptiles and other predators that still existed during the early part of the epoch. Other mammals became active during daytime hours when food sources were more available. Through continued time, mammals developed many different body forms. Some mammals remained small and light, which allowed movement through narrow spaces in vegetation and underground tunnels. Others developed stronger limbs for movement across open ground surfaces. The shape of the skull in many groups changed, with jaw structures becoming more specialized. For different types of feeding, the arrangement of teeth became more complex in some groups, allowing efficient processing of plant material or animal tissue. Brain size in relation to body size also showed gradual changes in several mammal lineages, supporting more complex behavior patterns, learning ability, and environmental response. Reproductive patterns in mammals also played a role in their expansion across environments. Many mammals gave birth to live young, and parental care became an important part of survival. Young mammals often required feeding, protection, and guidance during early stages of life. This led to the development of social behavior in some groups, where individuals remained close to family members or formed small groups for protection and resource sharing. Communication methods developed through sound, scent, and body movement, allowing coordination between individuals. As vegetation continued to spread, food sources became more available in many regions. Plant-eating mammals expanded into areas with dense leaf growth, seeds, fruits, and stems. Insect-eating mammals also found large amounts of food in soil, bark, and plant surfaces. Some mammals developed feeding habits that included both plant and animal material, allowing flexibility in different environmental conditions. This flexibility supported survival in changing conditions across time. The structure of ecosystems during the Paleocene epoch allowed many mammal groups to occupy different roles. Some mammals lived close to water sources, such as rivers, lakes, and wetlands. These environments supported feeding on aquatic plants, insects, and small water-dwelling organisms. Other mammals lived in dry forest regions where food sources required movement over larger areas. Underground environments also became important for some mammal groups that created burrows for protection and shelter. These underground spaces provided stable temperature conditions and protection from predators. Body size variation among mammals became more noticeable as time progressed through the epoch. Some lineages remained very small, with body structures suited for fast movement and hiding behaviors. Other lineages developed larger body sizes that supported stronger muscles and different feeding habits. Bone structure in larger mammals became more robust, supporting weight and movement across ground surfaces. Limb proportions adjusted to allow walking, running, climbing, or digging based on environmental needs. The skull and jaw systems of mammals showed continuous development. Teeth became more differentiated in shape, with front teeth adapted for cutting or gripping, and back teeth adapted for grinding or crushing. Jaw muscles became more developed in some groups, allowing stronger biting force. These changes supported access to a wide range of food types. Digestive systems also adjusted internally to process different food materials more effectively, allowing nutrients to be absorbed from plants and animal tissue. Sensory systems in mammals also developed during this time. Vision in some groups improved for detecting movement in low light conditions or in dense vegetation. Smell became an important sense for locating food, identifying other individuals, and detecting environmental changes. Hearing also developed in many groups, allowing detection of sound signals from predators, prey, or members of the same species. These sensory developments supported survival in environments with many different living organisms. Movement patterns among mammals changed as limb structures adapted to different environments. Some mammals developed limbs suited for climbing vertical surfaces, such as tree trunks. Others developed limbs suited for digging into soil or moving through underground tunnels. Some developed limbs for steady movement across open ground surfaces. Joint flexibility and bone structure supported these different movement patterns, allowing mammals to occupy many types of physical spaces. The spread of mammals across continents occurred through available land connections. As land surfaces shifted due to geological activity, mammals moved into new regions with available resources. These movements allowed populations to settle in areas with different environmental conditions. Once established, mammal groups adapted to local conditions over time, leading to the development of distinct biological traits within each region. Isolation of populations in different areas also contributed to the formation of many separate mammal lineages. Plant life during the Paleocene epoch played a major role in supporting mammal development. Forests contained a wide variety of plant types, including broadleaf trees, shrubs, and ground-covering plants. These plants produced seeds, fruits, leaves, and stems that served as food sources. Seasonal growth patterns in plants created changes in food availability throughout the year. Mammals adapted to these changes through feeding flexibility, food storage behavior, and movement across larger areas in search of resources. Insect populations also formed an important part of the ecosystem. Many mammals developed feeding habits focused on insects that lived in soil, wood, and vegetation. These insects included beetle-like forms, larvae stages, and flying insects. Mammals used smell, hearing, and touch to locate insect food sources. Digging behaviors and tree climbing behaviors supported access to insects in different environments. Some mammals specialized in feeding on insects at night, when insect activity increased in certain regions. The development of mammal nervous systems supported more complex behavior. Learning ability allowed mammals to respond to environmental changes over time. Memory supported the ability to remember food locations, shelter sites, and predator activity patterns. Social behavior in some groups allowed coordinated movement and shared protection. These behavioral traits supported survival in environments with many competing life forms. Environmental stability during parts of the Paleocene epoch allowed gradual development of ecosystems. Climate conditions supported plant growth and the expansion of forests across many regions. Rainfall patterns supported soil moisture, which in turn supported plant root systems and microbial activity in soil. These conditions created environments where mammals could find consistent food sources and shelter opportunities. Some mammal groups developed specialized feeding strategies based on available resources. Herbivorous feeding patterns included consumption of leaves, stems, and fruits. Insectivorous feeding patterns focused on small invertebrate organisms. Omnivorous feeding patterns included both plant and animal material. These feeding strategies allowed mammals to occupy different ecological roles within the same environment. Reproductive cycles in mammals were influenced by environmental conditions. Timing of birth in some groups aligned with periods of higher food availability. Offspring development stages required parental support in feeding and protection. This led to extended periods of care in some mammal groups, which influenced social structure and group behavior. Survival of young mammals depended on both environmental conditions and parental involvement. As mammal populations expanded across environments, interactions between different groups increased. Competition for food resources occurred in many regions, leading to separation of feeding habits and movement patterns. Some mammals occupied ground-level environments, while others occupied tree-based environments or underground environments. These spatial distributions allowed different groups to exist within the same general regions. Fossil evidence from the Paleocene epoch shows many changes in mammal bone structure, tooth arrangement, and skull formation. These fossils indicate gradual shifts in body structure over time, reflecting adaptation to different environmental conditions. The distribution of fossils across different geological layers shows the progression of mammal development through the epoch. The development of mammal diversity during the Paleocene epoch involved continuous changes in physical structure, behavior, and ecological role. These changes occurred across long periods of time as mammals spread into many different environments and adjusted to available resources. Each group of mammals followed its own path of development based on location, environment, and biological traits.
No.
The rise of early herbivorous mammals began after a major change in Earth's living world, when many large reptiles disappeared at the end of the Cretaceous period, around 66 million years ago. After this event, land environments changed in structure, plant life continued to grow in new directions, and many ecological spaces became open for mammals that were already present in small forms during earlier times. These mammals had existed for a long time before this period, mostly in small body sizes, living in hidden or less active parts of ecosystems, where they fed on insects, soft plant parts, seeds, and small amounts of available vegetation. After the major extinction event, the conditions on land allowed plant-eating habits in mammals to become more widespread, more diverse, and more specialized over long stretches of time. In the earliest part of the Paleocene epoch, which began immediately after the extinction event, vegetation started to spread widely across land surfaces. Forests formed in many regions, and plant types such as flowering plants, seed plants, and early forms of grasses began to occupy many habitats. These plant resources provided continuous food sources that were not fully used by larger animals, since many of the dominant reptile groups that had previously shaped plant consumption were no longer present. Early mammals began to use these plant resources more regularly. Some mammals that had previously fed mostly on insects or mixed diets started to include more plant material in their feeding patterns. During this time, mammal body forms remained relatively small in many groups, but gradual changes began to appear in their teeth, jaws, and digestive systems. Teeth that were once mainly suited for piercing or tearing began to show wider surfaces, suitable for grinding plant material. The shape of the jaw allowed more side-to-side movement in certain lineages, which helped in breaking down leaves, stems, and seeds. These changes did not occur all at once, but developed over many generations, as plant material became a stable part of feeding behavior. Plant-eating habits in early mammals also became linked with changes in daily activity patterns. Many of these mammals were active during different parts of the day or night, depending on safety and food availability. As plant feeding increased, feeding time also expanded, since plant material required more processing time to extract nutrients. Early herbivorous mammals often needed to consume larger quantities of plant matter to meet their energy needs because plant tissues contained fiber that was harder to digest than animal tissue. This led to gradual internal changes in the digestive tract in some lineages, including longer intestines and more complex gut processes that allowed better breakdown of plant fibers. In the Paleocene environment, plant communities included a wide range of leaves, shoots, fruits, and seeds. Flowering plants were especially important in many regions, producing soft leaves and nutrient-rich reproductive structures that early mammals could use. These plant parts were often easier to chew and digest, allowing mammals to expand their plant-based diets without needing highly specialized teeth at first. Over time, however, more specialized feeding structures began to appear as mammals developed stronger reliance on plant material. Fossil evidence from early Paleocene deposits shows that some mammals already had molar teeth with ridges and surfaces that helped in crushing vegetation. These dental features were important in processing fibrous plant tissues. The wear patterns on teeth show repeated grinding actions, indicating regular plant feeding behavior. In some groups, teeth also showed patterns of replacement over time, which helped maintain feeding ability despite heavy wear caused by plant material. As millions of years passed into the later Paleocene, mammal diversity increased in many regions. Plant-eating mammals began to appear in several different mammal lineages, not just one group. This suggests that plant feeding behavior developed multiple times independently in different evolutionary lines. Each lineage responded to available plant resources in its own way, leading to a wide range of feeding adaptations. Some mammals focused on soft leaves, others on seeds, and some on a mixture of plant materials. The structure of early herbivorous mammals also included changes in skull shape. The skull became more suited for strong chewing muscles in certain lineages. Muscle attachment areas on the skull became more developed, allowing stronger bite forces. These changes supported the ability to break down tougher plant materials that required more force to process. At the same time, sensory structures such as the nose and eyes remained important for detecting food sources and avoiding danger in forested environments. By the time the Paleocene began to transition into the Eocene epoch, around 56 million years ago, herbivorous mammals had become more established in many ecosystems. Plant communities were also changing during this time, with warmer global conditions allowing forests to spread into high-latitude regions. This expansion of plant life created more continuous food availability for plant-eating mammals, supporting further diversification. During this period, early hoofed mammals began to appear in fossil records. These animals showed body structures adapted for moving across soft ground and for browsing plant material. Their teeth had more developed grinding surfaces, and their limbs supported movement through forested areas where vegetation was dense. These mammals are part of early groups that later led to many different plant-eating lineages in later geological periods. Other early herbivorous mammals included small to medium-sized forms that fed on leaves, fruits, and seeds found in forest understories. These mammals often lived close to the ground where fallen plant material accumulated. Their feeding patterns involved picking, chewing, and repeated processing of plant matter. Some also fed on bark or tougher plant parts when softer materials were less available. The development of herbivorous mammals also involved changes in metabolic processes. Plant material contains energy that is stored in complex forms, requiring more time and chemical breakdown to extract nutrients. Early herbivorous mammals developed digestive systems that could support longer processing times. This included longer retention of food in the digestive tract and increased reliance on microbial activity in some lineages, although these systems were still developing during early stages. The expansion of plant-eating habits also influenced reproductive patterns in some mammal groups. Access to stable plant food sources allowed some species to maintain more consistent energy intake throughout the year. This stability supported changes in reproductive timing, with breeding patterns becoming more aligned with plant growth cycles in certain environments. Offspring growth also depended on the availability of plant-based nutrition, leading to gradual changes in feeding behavior of young mammals. Fossil evidence from early herbivorous mammals shows variations in tooth enamel thickness, jaw strength, and skull structure. These features reflect differences in plant feeding strategies across different environments. Some mammals developed teeth with sharp ridges for slicing leaves, while others developed broader surfaces for crushing seeds and plant fibers. These differences indicate a wide range of feeding approaches within early herbivorous mammals. As plant-eating mammals spread across different regions, they occupied a variety of ecological settings. Forest floors, river edges, and open woodland areas provided different types of plant resources. Early herbivorous mammals adapted to these environments by adjusting their feeding behavior to available plant types. Some species specialized in young leaves that were easier to digest, while others consumed mature leaves that required stronger chewing ability. During the early Eocene, global temperatures remained relatively warm, supporting dense plant growth in many regions. This environmental condition allowed herbivorous mammals to expand further in diversity and distribution. Plant communities became more complex, offering a wider range of food materials. Herbivorous mammals responded to this diversity by developing more specialized feeding habits. The skeletal structure of these mammals also reflected their feeding habits. Changes in neck length, head posture, and limb structure supported access to different plant sources. Some mammals developed body forms that allowed them to reach low vegetation, while others were able to access higher plant material. These structural changes developed gradually through long periods of evolutionary change. Dental wear patterns in herbivorous mammals from this time show continuous use of teeth for grinding plant matter. The enamel surfaces often display fine scratches and wear marks caused by repeated chewing. These patterns provide evidence of long-term plant feeding behavior across many generations. The durability of teeth became an important factor in survival, as individuals with stronger teeth could process food more effectively over their lifespans. Plant chemistry also played a role in shaping herbivorous mammal evolution. Many plants developed protective chemical compounds that affected taste and digestibility. Early herbivorous mammals developed physiological responses that allowed them to tolerate or process these compounds. Over time, this led to gradual changes in feeding preferences and dietary specialization in different lineages. In some early herbivorous mammals, seasonal changes in plant availability influenced feeding behavior. During times when fresh plant growth was abundant, these mammals fed on softer and more nutrient-rich plant parts. During periods when plant growth slowed, they relied on tougher plant materials or stored energy reserves. This pattern required flexibility in feeding behavior and digestive processing. The development of herbivory also influenced social behavior in some mammal groups. As plant food sources were often spread across wider areas, individuals moved through larger spaces to find sufficient food. This movement influenced interactions between individuals, leading to changes in grouping behavior in some species. However, these patterns varied widely across different mammal lineages. Over long periods of time, herbivorous mammals continued to diversify in form and function. Some lineages became more specialized in leaf feeding, while others focused on seeds, fruits, or mixed plant diets. These differences in feeding strategy were reflected in tooth shape, jaw mechanics, and digestive capacity. Each lineage adapted to specific plant resources available in their environments. The continued spread of flowering plants during the Paleocene and early Eocene played a major role in supporting herbivorous mammals. These plants produced a variety of edible structures that could be consumed in different ways. Leaves provided continuous food supply, fruits offered nutrient-rich seasonal resources, and seeds provided dense energy sources. Herbivorous mammals adapted to use these resources through changes in feeding behavior and physical structure. Fossil remains of early herbivorous mammals shows gradual changes over time in body structure and feeding adaptations. These remains include teeth, jaw fragments, and skeletal elements that indicate repeated use of plant material as a primary food source. The consistency of these features across different regions shows that plant feeding became a widespread strategy among mammals in the early stages of their expansion after the extinction event. The continued development of herbivorous mammals involved many small changes accumulated over long periods. These changes included modifications in tooth shape, jaw movement, digestive processing, and feeding behavior. Plant resources in the environment provided continuous opportunities for these changes to be maintained and expanded across generations of mammals living in different regions of the world. The emergence of early carnivorous mammals took place during a long period of environmental and biological change on Earth after a major extinction event that removed many dominant forms of life. This emergence happened within the early part of the Cenozoic era, especially during the Paleocene and Eocene time intervals, when ecosystems were rebuilding and many ecological roles were becoming newly occupied. The earliest carnivorous mammals developed from small ancestral mammal groups that had survived the extinction event that occurred around 66 million years ago. These ancestral mammals were generally small-bodied and occupied many ecological niches, including insect feeding, scavenging, and feeding on plant material. Over time, some of these mammals began to develop adaptations that allowed them to consume animal flesh more efficiently, which led to the gradual emergence of early carnivorous mammals. The Earth at this time was undergoing significant changes in temperature, vegetation distribution, and animal diversity. The extinction event had removed many large reptiles and many dominant vertebrate groups, leaving open ecological roles that involved active hunting and meat consumption. Mammals that survived the extinction had to adjust to new conditions where food sources were shifting and competition patterns were changing. Among these mammals, some lineages began to develop teeth that were sharper and more suited for cutting flesh, jaw structures that allowed stronger biting, and digestive systems that could process animal protein and fat more effectively. These changes occurred gradually over many generations through natural biological variation. Early carnivorous mammals were not immediately dominant in ecosystems. They were part of a broader group of small mammals that were diversifying into many different ecological roles. Some continued to focus on insects, some on plants, and others began to incorporate animal tissue into their diets. The earliest forms of carnivorous mammals likely fed on small vertebrates, including early birds, reptiles, amphibians, and other small mammals. This feeding behavior required increased agility, sensory development, and improved coordination between sight, smell, and movement. These traits developed gradually as individuals with more effective hunting and feeding abilities survived long enough to reproduce and pass on their characteristics. During the Paleocene epoch, which began immediately after the major extinction event, mammalian diversity expanded significantly. The environments of this time included forests with dense vegetation in many regions, as well as warmer global temperatures than those seen in later periods. In these environments, early carnivorous mammals began to appear in small numbers. These mammals belonged to several early mammalian lineages that would later give rise to more specialized groups. Some of these early carnivorous forms were members of primitive placental mammal groups that were still undergoing major evolutionary development in body structure and feeding behavior. One important feature in the emergence of carnivorous mammals was the development of teeth with distinct cutting edges. These teeth allowed early mammals to break down flesh more effectively. The structure of these teeth involved sharp cusps and ridges that could slice through tissue. Over time, the arrangement of teeth in the jaw became more specialized, allowing different teeth to perform different roles in food processing. Front teeth were used for gripping and holding, while back teeth became more specialized for cutting and crushing. This differentiation supported more efficient consumption of animal tissue. Jaw strength also increased in early carnivorous mammals. Muscles attached to the skull became stronger and more developed, allowing greater force to be applied during biting. The skull structure itself began to change in ways that supported stronger muscle attachment. These changes allowed early carnivorous mammals to process tougher food materials and handle prey with more efficiency. The development of stronger jaws also supported the ability to consume a wider range of animal materials, including bones in some cases. Sensory development played an important role in the emergence of carnivorous mammals. The sense of smell became more refined in many early mammalian carnivores, allowing them to detect the presence of prey or carrion. The development of larger nasal cavities and more complex olfactory structures supported this ability. Vision also became important, especially in detecting movement in low light conditions within forested environments. These sensory improvements supported hunting behavior and food location strategies. Body size variation among early carnivorous mammals was broad but many early forms remained relatively small. Small body size allowed access to narrow spaces, faster movement through dense vegetation, and reduced energy requirements. Some early carnivorous mammals likely lived in ground-level environments, while others may have occupied trees or semi-arboreal habitats. These different living environments influenced feeding behavior and prey selection. Small vertebrates and invertebrates formed a significant part of their diet during early stages of carnivorous adaptation. The evolution of early carnivorous mammals also involved changes in limb structure. Limbs became more adapted for movement that supported quick bursts of speed and sudden directional changes. The development of flexible joints allowed better maneuverability during hunting or prey capture. Claws in some lineages became more pronounced and useful for grasping or holding prey. These physical adaptations were important for improving feeding success in environments where prey could move quickly or hide in complex vegetation. The digestive systems of early carnivorous mammals also changed over time. The breakdown of animal tissue required enzymes and stomach structures capable of processing protein-rich diets. The length of the digestive tract in some carnivorous mammals became shorter relative to herbivorous mammals, allowing faster digestion of meat. This allowed energy to be extracted more quickly from food, supporting higher levels of activity and movement associated with hunting behavior. Fossil evidence of early carnivorous mammals comes from various regions of the world, including North America, Europe, Asia, and parts of other continents. These fossils show gradual changes in tooth shape, skull structure, and limb proportions. Some of the earliest identifiable carnivorous mammals belong to groups that would later diversify into more specialized predatory forms. These early fossils often show a combination of traits, including both insect feeding and meat-eating adaptations, indicating transitional feeding behaviors. During the early Eocene epoch, which began around 56 million years ago, mammalian carnivory became more developed and widespread. Global temperatures were high and many forested environments supported diverse animal communities. Early carnivorous mammals expanded into new ecological roles, feeding on a wider range of prey. Some lineages began to show more specialized features associated with active predation, including stronger bite forces and more precise tooth alignment. The development of carnivorous mammals during this period also involved ecological interactions with other mammals. Herbivorous mammals provided a source of prey, while omnivorous mammals competed for similar food resources. These interactions influenced the direction of evolutionary change in carnivorous mammals, encouraging improvements in hunting efficiency, sensory perception, and physical agility. The availability of different prey types also influenced dietary specialization in different carnivorous lineages. Some early carnivorous mammals developed adaptations for stealth and ambush behavior. These adaptations included silent movement, enhanced sensory awareness, and body structures that supported sudden acceleration. Other early carnivorous mammals may have relied on opportunistic feeding, consuming available animal remains rather than actively hunting. These varied feeding strategies allowed early carnivorous mammals to occupy multiple ecological roles during their development. The skull structure of early carnivorous mammals became increasingly specialized over time. The temporal region of the skull expanded in some lineages, allowing larger muscle attachment areas. This supported stronger biting force and more controlled jaw movement. The arrangement of teeth continued to evolve, with certain teeth becoming more dominant in cutting functions, while others supported gripping or crushing tasks. The nervous system of early carnivorous mammals also supported their ecological role. Increased brain development in regions associated with sensory processing and motor control allowed more effective coordination during feeding activities. Memory and learning abilities may have supported improved hunting strategies and environmental awareness. These neurological developments contributed to more successful interactions with prey and surroundings. Environmental conditions during the Paleocene and Eocene also influenced the distribution of early carnivorous mammals. Forested regions provided cover and hunting grounds, while open areas allowed different types of movement and prey detection. Seasonal variations in climate affected food availability and movement patterns of both predators and prey. Early carnivorous mammals adapted to these changing conditions through behavioral flexibility and dietary variation. The reproductive strategies of early carnivorous mammals also played a role in their emergence and survival. Many mammals produced multiple offspring, which increased the chances of survival in changing environments. Parental care behaviors likely supported the development of young mammals until they could hunt or feed independently. These reproductive traits contributed to the stability of carnivorous mammal populations over time. Some early carnivorous mammals developed semi-specialized diets that included both animal tissue and other food sources. This dietary flexibility allowed survival in environments where prey availability changed over time. The ability to switch between different food sources supported the continued existence and gradual expansion of carnivorous traits within mammalian groups. As time progressed through the Eocene, carnivorous mammals began to diversify into more distinct lineages. These lineages showed increasing specialization in diet, hunting behavior, and physical adaptation. Some groups became more adapted to fast pursuit of prey, while others became more adapted to ambush or scavenging behavior. These differences contributed to a wide range of carnivorous mammal forms, occupying various ecological roles. The emergence of early carnivorous mammals also influenced the evolution of other animal groups. Prey species developed defensive behaviors, increased speed, improved sensory awareness, and protective physical traits. These changes occurred in response to predation pressure from carnivorous mammals. The ongoing interaction between predators and prey contributed to continuous evolutionary change in multiple groups of organisms. Geographic separation of mammal populations also contributed to diversity in early carnivorous mammals. Populations isolated in different regions developed unique traits based on local environmental conditions and available prey types. This led to the development of varied carnivorous mammal forms across different continents and ecosystems. The fossil record indicates that early carnivorous mammals gradually increased in diversity over millions of years. Changes in tooth structure, skull morphology, limb proportions, and sensory systems are visible in fossil remains. These changes reflect ongoing adaptation to ecological roles involving animal consumption. The gradual nature of these changes shows long-term biological development across many generations. Early carnivorous mammals eventually contributed to the later development of more advanced mammalian predators in subsequent geological periods. Their early adaptations formed the foundation for later evolutionary changes that produced highly specialized carnivorous mammal groups in later eras. The evolution of early primates is a long process that took place over many millions of years and involved slow changes in body structure, behavior, diet, and living environments. Early primates are part of the larger group of mammals, and their origins are linked to the time after the extinction event that removed many large reptiles and opened many ecological spaces for mammals. The development of early primates involved gradual biological changes that helped small tree-living mammals adapt better to life in forests and in environments where movement among branches, careful vision, and flexible hands became important for survival and daily activities. Early primates began to appear during a long span of time that followed the end of the age of non-avian dinosaurs, which ended about 66 million years ago. In the millions of years after this time, mammals began to spread into many different habitats. Some of these mammals remained small and lived on the ground, while others started to spend more time in trees. The early primate line developed from small mammals that already had some features useful for climbing and grasping, such as flexible limbs, nails instead of claws in some cases, and eyes that faced more forward than those of many other mammals. The earliest forms connected to primates are often discussed as primate-like mammals or proto-primates. These animals lived during the late part of the Paleocene and early part of the Eocene epochs. The Paleocene epoch began about 66 million years ago and lasted until about 56 million years ago. During this time, forests spread widely in many regions of the world, and warm conditions allowed dense plant growth. These environments created many opportunities for small mammals that could move through trees and feed on fruits, insects, and leaves. The early proto-primates were small animals, and many of them were active during the night. Their bodies were adapted for climbing, with hands and feet that could hold onto branches. Their fingers were long and flexible in many species, and their nails began to replace claws in some forms, which helped with gripping surfaces and handling food. Their vision became more important than smell in many cases, and their eyes moved toward the front of the face. This forward placement of the eyes allowed better depth perception, which is useful for moving through branches and judging distances. During the early Eocene epoch, which began about 56 million years ago and lasted until about 39 million years ago, the first true primates began to appear. These early primates are often placed into groups such as Adapiforms and Omomyiforms. These groups show many features that are linked with modern primates, although they were not the same as present-day species. Adapiforms were generally more similar to later lemurs and lorises in some body features, while Omomyiforms showed features that are closer in some ways to tarsiers. The early primates of this time lived in forest environments that were warm and wet in many regions. Trees were dense and plant life was rich. Fruits, leaves, flowers, and insects were widely available as food sources. Early primates developed teeth that were suited for a mixed diet. Their molars often had shapes that allowed them to break down plant material as well as insect bodies. The structure of their jaws also allowed a range of chewing movements, which supported different types of feeding behavior. The skeletons of early primates show several important features. Their arms and legs were able to move in many directions, which helped them climb and move among branches. The joints in their shoulders and hips became more flexible over time. Their hands had thumbs that could move in a way that allowed better grasping of objects. In many species, the big toe on the foot also became more separated from the other toes, which helped in holding branches with the feet as well as the hands. The brain size of early primates was generally larger in proportion to their body size when compared with many other mammals of similar size living at the same time. This increase in brain proportion was gradual and supported more complex behavior. These animals had to find food in three-dimensional environments, avoid predators, and move carefully among branches. The development of better vision and improved coordination between eyes and limbs played an important role in their daily life. Fossil evidence of early primates has been found in many parts of the world, including North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. These fossils include skulls, teeth, and partial skeletons. Teeth are often the most common fossils because they are hard and preserve well over long periods of time. The shape of teeth helps scientists understand what kinds of food these animals ate. Sharp, pointed teeth suggest insect-eating habits, while flatter teeth suggest fruit and plant-eating habits. During the Middle Eocene, primate diversity increased in several regions. Different groups of early primates spread into different environments. Some remained in tropical forests, while others adapted to slightly cooler regions. The structure of their limbs continued to change in ways that supported better climbing ability. The length of their fingers and toes often increased relative to body size, which helped with gripping branches more securely. As the Eocene continued, changes in climate began to affect forests. Some regions became less warm and less humid over time. These changes influenced the distribution of early primates and caused shifts in where different groups could live. Some primate groups reduced in number in certain areas, while others adapted to new conditions or moved into regions that still had suitable forest environments. The early primate lineage is closely connected to the development of traits that are still seen in modern primates. These traits include forward-facing eyes, grasping hands, flexible limbs, and relatively large brains. Each of these traits developed gradually and did not appear at the same time. Instead, they formed through many small changes across long periods of time. The forward placement of the eyes is linked to the need for accurate depth perception. In tree environments, estimating distance is important for safe movement. Early primates that had slightly more forward-facing eyes could judge distances more accurately when moving between branches. Over time, this feature became more developed and consistent across primate species. Grasping hands developed through changes in bone structure, muscle arrangement, and finger length. The thumb became more opposable in many early primates, allowing it to touch the other fingers. This ability made it easier to hold food items and to grip branches securely. The development of nails instead of claws in some primate lines also helped with fine control of objects and better sensitivity in the fingertips. The diet of early primates was diverse. Many species ate fruits, which provided energy and nutrients. Fruits were common in forest environments, and their availability influenced primate movement and feeding behavior. Insects were also an important part of the diet for many early primates, providing protein and other nutrients. Some species also consumed leaves and flowers, depending on what was available in their habitat. The social behavior of early primates is not fully known, but fossil evidence and comparison with modern primates suggest that some level of social interaction was likely present. Living in groups can provide protection from predators and can help in finding food. Communication among individuals may have involved sounds, body movements, and facial expressions. The development of vision supported better recognition of movement and expression in others. The sensory system of early primates placed strong emphasis on vision. The eyes became more developed for detecting movement and color in some species. The reduction of reliance on smell is seen in the structure of the skull and the reduced size of certain smell-related brain regions compared to other mammals. This shift supported better interaction with the visual environment of forest canopies. The growth and development of early primates, from young to adult stages, also show important patterns. Young individuals likely depended on parental care for survival during early life stages. This care would have included protection, feeding, and teaching of basic movement skills. The length of development time may have increased in some species as brain size and behavioral complexity increased. During the later part of the Eocene and into the Oligocene epoch, which began about 33 million years ago, further environmental changes occurred. Global cooling trends led to changes in forest coverage in many regions. Some early primate groups became less widespread, while others adapted to new conditions or moved to regions that remained warm and forested. These changes influenced the direction of primate evolution and led to the survival of certain lineages that would later give rise to modern primate groups. The fossil record shows that early primates were not uniform in form or behavior. Different species had different body sizes, diets, and movement abilities. Some were very small and light, while others were larger and more robust. These differences reflect adaptation to different ecological roles within forest environments. The variation among early primates shows that their evolution involved many separate branches developing at the same time. The structure of the spine and limbs in early primates supported climbing and balancing. The spine was flexible, allowing the body to bend and adjust during movement. Through trees. The limbs were arranged in a way that supported upward, downward, and sideways movement. This flexibility was important for navigating complex forest structures with many obstacles and gaps between branches. The development of early primates also involved changes in reproductive patterns. Many early primates likely gave birth to small numbers of offspring at a time. This reproductive strategy allowed more care and attention to each young individual. The survival of offspring depended strongly on parental support and protection during early development stages. The distribution of early primates across continents suggests that they were able to spread widely when suitable forest conditions existed. Land connections between regions during certain geological periods allowed movement across large areas. As climates changed, these distributions shifted and populations became isolated in different regions. This isolation contributed to further diversification of primate forms. The study of early primate evolution relies on fossils, comparative anatomy, and genetic information from living primates. Fossils provide direct evidence of ancient forms, while living primates help scientists understand how certain features may have functioned. Genetic studies show relationships between different primate groups and help estimate when different lineages separated in evolutionary time. Early primates represent an important stage in the development of mammalian life. Their anatomical and behavioral features show gradual changes that support life in forest environments. Their evolution involved many small adjustments in body structure, sensory systems, and movement abilities over long periods of time. The Oligocene cooling period and its effects refers to a long stage in Earth's past when global temperatures became lower and large parts of the planet moved into cooler climate conditions. This period took place within the Oligocene epoch, which lasted from about 34 million years ago to about 23 million years ago. During this long span of time, Earth experienced major changes in air temperature, ocean conditions, ice formation, land environments, and living organisms. The cooling did not happen in a single moment. It developed gradually over millions of years, with many small changes building up across land, oceans, and the atmosphere. At the beginning of the Oligocene epoch, Earth had already moved away from the warmer climate conditions of earlier times. Even before this epoch began, a slow drop in global warmth had started. This long movement toward cooler conditions continued during the Oligocene and became more noticeable in many regions of the world. Air temperatures in many parts of the planet reduced over time, and this change affected rainfall patterns, wind systems and seasonal cycles. Areas that once had warm and humid conditions began to experience more dryness or cooler weather, depending on their location. One of the most important features of the Oligocene cooling period was the growth of large ice sheets in Antarctica. Before this time, Antarctica had less permanent ice coverage. As temperatures continued to fall, ice began to form more regularly and spread across the continent. Over long periods of time, this ice became thick and stable. The formation of large ice sheets in Antarctica played a major role in the overall climate system of Earth because it affected sea levels, ocean currents, and heat distribution across the globe. The growth of ice sheets also caused a reduction in sea levels. When large amounts of water become stored as ice on land, it reduces the amount of water in the oceans. This process led to the exposure of some coastal areas that were previously under shallow seawater. As sea levels changed, coastlines shifted in many regions. Shallow marine environments became smaller in some places, and new land areas appeared in others. These changes affected both marine life and coastal ecosystems. The cooling period was also strongly connected to changes in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is a gas that plays a major role in trapping heat in the atmosphere. During the Oligocene, levels of carbon dioxide gradually reduced over long periods of time. This reduction contributed to lower global temperatures. The decrease in carbon dioxide was influenced by many natural processes, including changes in volcanic activity, weathering of rocks on land, and long-term carbon storage in oceans and sediments. Volcanic activity during this time released gases into the atmosphere, including carbon dioxide. But over millions of years, the balance between release and removal of carbon dioxide shifted. Rock weathering on land increased in certain regions due to uplift of land surfaces and exposure of fresh rock. When rainwater and air interacted with these rocks, chemical processes took place that removed carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The removed carbon became stored in dissolved form and eventually moved into oceans and sediments, contributing to long-term cooling. Ocean circulation also changed during the Oligocene cooling period. As temperatures dropped, the density and movement of ocean water were affected. Cold water became more common in deep ocean regions, and patterns of ocean flow began to shift. These changes influenced how heat was distributed across the planet. Ocean currents carried cold water across large distances, which supported cooler conditions in many regions. The development of strong deep ocean currents also helped transport nutrients and affect marine ecosystems. The formation of ice in Antarctica had a strong effect on ocean circulation. As ice grew on land, it released fresh water into the surrounding oceans when it melted in certain seasons or broke into icebergs. This fresh water influenced the salinity of ocean water, which is the amount of salt present. Changes in salinity affected how water moved between surface and deep ocean layers. These processes played a role in shaping long-term climate conditions during the Oligocene epoch. During the cooling period, different regions of the world experienced changes in rainfall. Some areas became drier, while others experienced shifts in seasonal rainfall patterns. The movement of air masses changed due to lower global temperatures and altered pressure systems in the atmosphere. These changes influenced where clouds formed and how much rain fell in different regions. Some regions that had supported dense forests in earlier warm periods began to support more open landscapes. Vegetation on land responded to the cooling climate. Plant types that required warm and wet conditions reduced in many areas, while plants adapted to cooler or drier environments became more widespread. Forests in some regions became less dense, and open woodlands and grass-like vegetation increased in certain places. Plant life adjusted slowly over long periods of time, following changes in temperature and rainfall. Animal life also changed during the Oligocene cooling period. Mammals continued to develop into many different forms, and groups of animals adapted to the changing environments. Some species moved into new regions, while others became restricted to areas that still provided suitable conditions. The spread of open habitats influenced the movement and feeding behavior of many land animals. Animals that relied on dense forests adapted to new conditions or shifted their locations to remaining forested areas. In marine environments, cooling temperatures influenced the distribution of fish and other sea organisms. Cold water species expanded into regions that had previously been warmer. At the same time, some warm water species reduced in number or moved toward regions closer to the equator where temperatures remained higher. Ocean nutrient levels changed due to shifts in circulation, which affected the growth of plankton. Plankton are small organisms that form the base of marine food systems, and their distribution influenced many other marine species. The Oligocene cooling period also affected the formation of deserts and dry regions on land. As global climate patterns shifted, some areas received less rainfall over long periods. These regions gradually became more arid. Dry landscapes expanded in parts of continents where rainfall became less frequent. Wind activity in these dry regions influenced the movement of dust and sediments, which contributed to changes in soil composition. Mountain ranges played a role in influencing climate during this time. As landmasses slowly moved and collided over millions of years, some mountain regions continued to rise. Higher land surfaces affected air movement and rainfall distribution. Air moving over elevated land areas cooled and lost moisture, which influenced rainfall patterns on different sides of mountain regions. These processes contributed to variations in local climates during the cooling period. The position of continents also influenced the climate system during the Oligocene epoch. The arrangement of land masses affected ocean currents and wind patterns. The separation of continents created pathways for ocean circulation that did not exist in earlier periods. These pathways allowed colder water to move more freely between ocean basins, which contributed to the spread of cooler conditions across the planet. In the southern hemisphere, the area around Antarctica became increasingly isolated by ocean currents. This isolation reduced the flow of warmer waters towards the continent. As a result, cold conditions remained stable around Antarctica, allowing ice sheets to expand further. The continuous presence of ice affected surrounding ocean conditions and reinforced cooling processes in nearby regions. Seasonal cycles during the Oligocene cooling period became more distinct in many areas. Differences between warmer and cooler parts of the year became clearer due to overall lower global temperatures. These seasonal changes affected plant growth cycles, animal behavior, and migration patterns. Many species adjusted their life cycles to match the timing of available food and favorable environmental conditions. Soil formation processes also changed during this period. Lower temperatures and shifts in vegetation influenced how organic material broke down in soils. In some regions, slower plant growth affected the amount of organic matter entering the soil. Rainfall changes also influenced how minerals moved through soil layers. These processes affected soil structure and fertility in different regions of the world. Glaciers in Antarctica moved slowly across land surfaces, shaping the underlying terrain over long periods of time. As ice moved, it carried rock material and deposited it in different locations. This movement created patterns in the land surface beneath the ice. The presence of thick ice sheets also influenced the pressure on the Earth's crust in those regions, causing slow changes in land elevation over millions of years. The cooling period influenced the carbon cycle of Earth in multiple ways. Carbon moved between the atmosphere, oceans, land, and living organisms through natural processes. As temperatures dropped, more carbon became stored in ocean sediments and land deposits. This long-term storage reduced the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which further supported cooler conditions. Biological activity also played a role in moving carbon through ecosystems as plants and animals lived, died, and decomposed. Marine sediments formed during the Oligocene contain evidence of changes in ocean conditions. Layers of sediment show variations in material that reflect shifts in temperature, biological activity, and ocean circulation. These sediments accumulated slowly over millions of years on the ocean floor. They preserve information about the chemical and physical conditions of ancient oceans during the cooling period. In many parts of the world, river systems adjusted to changing climate conditions. Changes in rainfall influenced river flow levels and sediment transport. Some rivers carried more sediment during periods of increased rainfall, while others carried less during drier periods. River channels shifted over time in response to changing water flow and sediment build-up. These processes influenced the shape of landscapes in many regions. Wind patterns during the Oligocene cooling period were influenced by temperature differences between regions. As polar areas became colder, pressure differences developed between high-latitude and lower-latitude regions. The period known as the Pleistocene Ice Ages refers to a long span of Earth history, when very large parts of the planet experienced repeated expansion and retreat of thick ice sheets. This time began about 2,580,000 years ago and extended until about 11,700 years ago. During this long interval, the climate changed many times in cycles that brought colder phases with widespread ice and warmer phases with reduced ice cover. These shifts shaped land surfaces, water systems, plant life, and animal life across many regions of the world. The ice sheets formed in the northern and southern regions and covered vast areas of land, reaching across continents and altering natural environments. The ice sheets that formed during this time were built from snow that accumulated over long periods. As snow layers built up, pressure increased and turned the snow into solid ice. This ice slowly moved across land due to its own weight. The movement of ice-carved valleys shaped hills and changed the direction of rivers. Large parts of North America, Northern Europe and Northern Asia experienced repeated coverage by these ice sheets. In southern regions near mountains, ice also formed in high places, where temperatures remained low enough for snow to remain throughout the year. These high ice regions contributed to changes in surrounding environments. The climate shifts during the Pleistocene Ice Ages were influenced by changes in Earth's orbit, variations in solar energy reaching Earth, and shifts in atmospheric composition. These factors affected how heat was distributed across the planet. Periods of lower temperatures allowed ice sheets to expand, while periods of higher temperatures allowed them to shrink. These cycles occurred many times over thousands of years. Each cycle influenced vegetation patterns, water availability, and animal movement across land areas. During colder phases, large parts of the northern hemisphere had frozen ground. Soil layers remained hard for long periods. Water from melted snow and ice formed large lakes and streams during warmer intervals. These water systems changed direction frequently due to ice movement and melting patterns. Rivers that exist today in many regions were shaped during this time. Sediment carried by melting water was spread across wide areas, forming plains and river valleys. The plant life during the Pleistocene ice ages changed according to temperature and moisture levels. In colder areas, low-growing plants, such as grasses and small shrubs, covered large regions. In slightly warmer areas, forests of pine, spruce, and other cold-tolerant trees grew. These forests expanded and reduced repeatedly as climate cycles shifted. In regions closer to the equator, vegetation remained more stable but still experienced changes in rainfall patterns and temperature variation. Animal life during the Pleistocene ice ages included many large species known as megafauna. These animals had large body sizes and lived in different environments across the world. Their presence is recorded through fossils found in soil layers, caves, and sediment deposits. These animals included large mammals that lived on grasslands, in forests, and in cold tundra environments. Their bodies were adapted to survive cold conditions, seasonal changes, and variations in food supply. In northern regions, large herbivorous mammals lived in groups and moved across open landscapes. These animals fed on grasses, shrubs, and other plant material available in cold environments. Their feeding habits influenced vegetation growth and distribution. Predatory animals also lived in these regions and relied on hunting herbivores for food. These predators had strong bodies and developed methods for tracking and capturing prey across frozen and open land. In many regions, mammoths were present as one of the most well-known megafauna groups. These animals had thick fur and large curved tusks. They lived in cold grassland environments and moved across wide areas in search of food. Their remains have been found in frozen soil, preserved due to low temperatures that slowed decomposition. The structure of their bones shows adaptation to heavy body weight and long-distance movement. Woolly rhinoceroses lived in similar environments. These animals had thick skin and dense hair covering their bodies. They fed on grasses and shrubs and moved through cold steppe environments. Their fossils have been found in regions that were once covered by ice sheets or located near ice margins. Their physical remains provide information about body structure and feeding patterns. Large deer species lived in both forested and open areas. These animals had broad antlers that developed seasonally. They moved through changing environments and adapted to variations in plant availability. Their remains appear in many fossil sites across northern regions. Horses also lived in large groups across grassland areas. These animals moved over long distances in search of food and water sources. Predatory megafauna included large cats with strong jaws and muscular bodies. These animals hunted herbivores and played a role in regulating animal populations. They used stealth and speed in open environments and relied on strength to capture prey. Other predators included large bears that occupied different habitats and used varied food sources depending on availability. In colder tundra environments, some animals developed adaptations for survival in low temperatures. Thick fur, fat layers under the skin, and specialized hooves or feet allowed movement across snow and ice-covered ground. These adaptations supported survival during long cold periods when food sources were limited. Seasonal changes influenced migration patterns of many animal groups, leading to movement between regions during different times of the year. The Pleistocene ice ages also influenced the development of caves and underground systems. Ice movement caused cracks and openings in rock layers. Water flowing through these areas created underground passages. Many animals used caves for shelter during cold conditions. Fossils preserved in caves provide information about species distribution and environmental conditions during this time. Human ancestors were also present during parts of the Pleistocene ice ages. Early human groups lived in small communities and used tools made from stone, bone, and wood. These tools were used for hunting, cutting, and processing plant materials. Human groups moved across landscapes following animal populations and seasonal changes in food availability. Fire use developed in some regions and supported survival in cold conditions by providing warmth and allowing food preparation. The interaction between human groups and megafauna involved hunting and scavenging activities. Human populations used coordinated methods to obtain food from large animals. Evidence from archaeological sites shows animal bones with cut marks and stone tools associated with hunting activities. These activities contributed to the use of animal resources for food, clothing, and shelter materials. Vegetation zones shifted repeatedly during the ice cycles. Forest regions expanded during warmer phases and reduced during colder phases. Grasslands expanded during colder phases, when open land increased. These shifts affected animal distribution and movement patterns. Plant seeds and spores spread through wind and water, allowing vegetation to return after ice retreat. Glacial movement shaped many physical features of land. Large ice sheets moved slowly across rock surfaces, removing soil and reshaping terrain. Meltwater from glaciers carried sediments into valleys and plains. These sediments formed layers that remain visible in geological records. River systems changed direction due to ice blockage and melting processes. Sea levels changed during the Pleistocene ice ages due to the amount of water stored in ice sheets. During colder periods, large amounts of water remained frozen on land, leading to lower sea levels. During warmer periods, melting ice increased water flow into oceans. These changes affected coastal environments and land connections between regions. Land bridges formed in some areas, allowing movement of animals and human groups across regions that are now separated by water. Many megafauna species developed specialized feeding habits. Some animals fed on grasses that grew in open plains. Others fed on shrubs and tree leaves in forested areas. These feeding patterns influenced plant growth and distribution. The presence of large herbivores affected the structure of vegetation by removing plant material and creating open spaces for new growth. The fossil record from this time includes bones, teeth, and preserved soft tissues in rare conditions. These remains provide information about body structure, diet, and environmental conditions. Some remains are found in frozen ground, where low temperatures preserved organic material. Other remains are found in sediment layers formed by river deposits or lake beds. Bird species during the Pleistocene ice ages also adapted to cold environments. Some birds migrated between regions based on seasonal changes. Others remained in cold areas throughout the year and developed physical traits for survival in low temperatures. Fish species in rivers and lakes adjusted to changes in water temperature and flow patterns. The Pleistocene ice ages ended when global temperatures increased and ice sheets began to retreat. This process exposed large areas of land that had been covered by ice for long periods. New landscapes formed from exposed rock and sediment. Vegetation began to grow in these areas, and animal populations shifted into newly available habitats. Water systems adjusted to new land formations, and river paths stabilized in many regions. Soil development began in areas previously covered by ice. Organic material from plants and animals contributed to soil formation. This supported the growth of vegetation in regions that had been frozen for long periods. Animal populations expanded into these areas as food sources became available. Movement of species across regions continued as environments changed. Large animal populations experienced shifts in distribution during the later stages of the Pleistocene ice ages. Changes in climate and vegetation affected food availability. Some species moved into regions with suitable conditions. Fossil evidence shows changes in population density and distribution across time periods. Human groups expanded across many regions during the later Pleistocene period. Tool technology developed further, allowing improved hunting and processing of materials. Shelter construction became more complex in some areas, using animal remains and natural materials. Clothing made from animal hides provided protection against cold conditions. Ice retreat exposed new migration routes across land areas. These routes allowed movement of both animals and human groups into previously inaccessible regions. River valleys and plains formed pathways that supported travel and resource access. Environmental changes continued to shape habitats across wide areas. Earth during the Pliocene epoch held many ongoing natural processes that shaped land, water, air, and living organisms across long stretches of time. This period began about 5,333,000 years ago and continued until about 2,580,000 years ago. Throughout these years, Earth maintained active movement in its crust, changes in climate systems, and steady development in ecosystems across oceans, land surfaces, and atmospheric circulation. The arrangement of continents had already taken a form close to what exists in present times, yet internal Earth forces continued to adjust land positions slowly. These adjustments influenced the direction of river systems, the shape of coastlines, and the distribution of habitats across different regions of the planet. Large sections of land experienced gradual shifts due to movements inside Earth's crust. These movements affected how land connected or separated in various regions. One major development involved the formation of a continuous land connection between the northern and southern land areas of the Americas. This land connection allowed movement of animals and plants across regions that were previously separated by ocean water. At the same time, ocean circulation patterns adjusted because water flow between large ocean basins became restricted. This change influenced how ocean waters moved heat and nutrients across global waters, affecting marine environments in many coastal and deep ocean regions. Atmospheric systems during this epoch followed long cycles of change influenced by ocean behavior, land surface conditions, and solar energy distribution. Air movement patterns carried moisture and heat across different regions. Some areas experienced steady rainfall patterns at certain times of the year, while other regions experienced long dry intervals, followed by shorter, wet periods. These patterns shaped vegetation distribution and soil development. Dust movement in the air also played a role in shaping land surfaces and influencing plant growth in dry regions. The atmosphere carried particles from volcanic activity, dry land surfaces, and ocean spray, spreading them across wide distances. The global climate system during the Pliocene epoch underwent continuous changes in temperature patterns, rainfall distribution, and seasonal cycles. Early in the epoch, Earth's climate supported extensive warm conditions across many regions. As time passed, conditions gradually shifted toward cooler atmospheric states in several parts of the planet. These shifts influenced the formation and spread of ice in polar regions. Ice sheets began to develop in northern polar areas, marking important changes in Earth's long-term climate system. These ice formations influenced ocean behavior by affecting how much water remained stored in solid form on land. Ocean systems during this epoch were highly active and played a central role in distributing heat and nutrients across the planet. Ocean currents moved water across large distances, connecting tropical waters with polar regions. The movement of water between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean became restricted due to land formation between the Americas. This restriction influenced how ocean currents circulated heat. Marine ecosystems adjusted to these changes as plankton distribution shifted in response to nutrient movement. Fish populations followed changes in food availability, and many marine species adjusted their living zones according to temperature and nutrient patterns in ocean water. Sea levels during the Pliocene epoch experienced repeated changes due to the formation and melting of large ice masses in polar regions. When large amounts of water were stored as ice on land, ocean levels stood at different positions along coastlines. When ice returned to liquid form, ocean waters spread across coastal areas. These changes influenced the shape of coastlines and the formation of shallow marine environments. Coastal plains appeared in some periods and were covered by ocean waters in others. River mouths shifted their positions as water reached different points along land edges, and sediment from rivers spread into coastal waters, forming new layers of soil and sand. Land ecosystems during this epoch showed wide distribution across forests, grasslands, and dry regions. Vegetation patterns depended on rainfall distribution, soil conditions, and temperature cycles. Forested regions contained dense plant life with tall trees, shrubs, and ground vegetation. Grass-covered regions expanded in areas where rainfall followed seasonal patterns, supporting herbivorous animal life that depended on grasses for food. Dry regions existed in places where rainfall remained limited for long periods, allowing only certain types of plants adapted to low water availability to survive. Plant life in these areas developed structures that reduced water loss and supported survival under dry air conditions. Soil development during the Pliocene epoch was influenced by rainfall, temperature, vegetation cover, and rock breakdown. In regions with continuous plant cover, soil layers developed gradually as plant material decayed and mixed with mineral particles. In dry regions, soil formation occurred slowly due to limited plant material and reduced moisture. Wind movement carried fine particles across land surfaces, adding new layers to soil in different regions. Rivers transported sediment from high land areas to low-lying regions, spreading mineral-rich materials across floodplains and coastal zones. Animal life during this epoch was widely distributed across land and water environments. On land, many species adapted to different types of vegetation and climate conditions. Some animals lived in forest environments where plant cover provided shelter and food sources. Other animals lived in grass-covered regions where movement across open land supported feeding and migration patterns. Dry regions supported animals that adapted to limited water availability and sparse vegetation. Animal diets varied widely, including plant-based feeding, mixed feeding, and meat-based feeding behaviors, depending on species type and environmental conditions. Marine life during the Pliocene epoch included many forms of microscopic organisms, fish, and larger ocean animals. Microscopic plankton formed the base of ocean food systems, supporting larger organisms such as fish and marine mammals. Changes in ocean currents affected plankton distribution, which influenced food availability across different marine regions. Fish populations adjusted movement patterns based on nutrient availability and water temperature conditions. Larger marine animals followed food sources across wide ocean regions, adapting to changes in migration paths and feeding zones. River systems across land surfaces played an important role in shaping landscapes during this epoch. Rivers carried water from inland regions to oceans, transporting sediment and nutrients along their paths. These sediments formed floodplains, deltas, and coastal deposits. River channels changed direction over time due to sediment buildup and land movement. Some rivers created wide floodplain areas where seasonal water flow supported vegetation growth and soil development. Other rivers carved deep channels into rock layers, shaping valleys and guiding water movement across long distances. Volcanic activity continued in various regions during the Pliocene epoch, releasing material from inside Earth to the surface. Volcanic eruptions released ash, gases, and molten rock, which spread across land and air environments. Ash particles settled on land surfaces and mixed with soil layers, influencing soil composition and plant growth conditions. Gases released into the atmosphere contributed to changes in air composition and temperature patterns. Lava flows created new land surfaces that later became habitats for plants and animals after cooling and solidification. Mountain regions continued to form and adjust due to tectonic forces. These forces pushed layers of rock upward, creating elevated landforms that influenced rainfall patterns and river flow directions. Mountain slopes provided environments for different plant types depending on altitude, moisture levels, and sunlight exposure. Rivers originating in mountain regions carried water and sediment into lower regions, connecting high land systems with plains and coastal environments. These connections influenced how ecosystems developed across long distances. Dry land regions during the Pliocene epoch expanded in some areas due to changes in rainfall distribution and atmospheric movement patterns. These regions supported plant species adapted to limited water conditions. Animal life in these regions developed survival strategies based on long movement across land, water conservation, and adaptation to seasonal food availability. Wind activity shaped the surface of dry regions by moving fine particles and forming layers of sediment in different areas. Wetland environments existed in regions where water remained present for extended periods. These environments supported dense plant growth and provided habitats for many animal species. Wetlands formed along river edges, coastal areas, and low-lying land surfaces where water accumulation remained stable. These environments acted as zones where water, soil, and plant life interacted continuously, supporting diverse biological activity. Forested environments during this epoch were present in regions where rainfall and soil conditions supported dense vegetation growth. Trees formed layered structures with upper and lower plant levels. These environments supported animal species that lived in tree-covered areas, as well as ground-dwelling species. Plant growth in forested regions followed cycles influenced by rainfall distribution and soil nutrient availability. Grass-covered environments spread across wide land areas where rainfall supported seasonal plant growth. These environments supported animal life that moved across open land in search of food and water. Plant life in these regions grew in cycles with periods of active growth followed by dry intervals. Soil in grass-covered regions developed through repeated plant growth and decay cycles, which contributed organic material to the ground. Air circulation patterns during the Pliocene epoch influenced temperature distribution and rainfall movement across continents and oceans. Winds carried moisture from ocean surfaces to land regions, supporting rainfall in certain areas. Other wind patterns transported dry air across land surfaces, influencing dry conditions in some regions. These air movements shaped plant distribution and soil moisture levels, across wide areas. Chemical processes in oceans during this epoch influenced nutrient availability and marine life distribution. Dissolved minerals supported the growth of microscopic organisms that formed the base of ocean food systems. Changes in water movement affected how these nutrients spread across ocean regions. Marine ecosystems adjusted continuously to these changes in nutrient distribution. Sediment layers formed during the Pliocene epoch recorded changes in environmental conditions over long periods of time. Layers of soil, sand and rock materials accumulated in different environments, including river valleys, coastal regions, ocean floors, and dry land areas. These layers preserved information about water movement, climate conditions, and biological activity. Earth systems during the Pliocene epoch continued to interact through land movement, ocean circulation, atmospheric flow, and biological activity. These interactions shaped ecosystems across all regions of the planet, influencing how plants and animals lived, moved, and developed within their environments.